All right, so by now you guys should have the aim in your notebooks included in the number 4.6. You should have the aim copied exactly as it's shown here in the slide. And we just discussed the do now, so away we go. All right, so first slide, I will give you a second. There's not much here in red, so you guys can copy this down. We said that geography dictates lifestyle, right? So Sparta has a lack of natural barriers. We said that natural barriers definitely cause cultural isolation, and we usually see that as a negative. But there is some positive aspects of natural barriers. When you're surrounded by mountains, you are kind of naturally protected against invasion. And that was the case in Athens. Athens was surrounded almost on all sides by mountains. So they were kind of protected from invasion. Sparta was different. Sparta was located right on a river, and we'll get to that. And also, they didn't have all those mountain ranges surrounding them the whole way. So the geography wasn't there to protect Sparta from invasion. Therefore, Sparta had to protect itself. So that's a big reason why Sparta will become a very militaristic city state as compared to Athens, because Sparta could not benefit from the natural barriers that would protect it from invasion when Athens could. Athens didn't need to focus on their military because the mountains offered the protection for them. Understand? So that's the important thing to understand. If we understand the geography and the impact of geography on each of the city states, that helps us to understand why their cultures develop the way they do. Okay, next slide. I'll give you a second. Okay, it's important to understand that Sparta also relied heavily on slave labor to kind of sustain itself. These slaves were known as helots. Okay, and the Spartans needed to keep the helots under control to continue providing that free labor for them in order to keep the civilization up and running. So as a result, Sparta was very much kind of a police state where there was a strong military presence almost at all times. And part of their job was to keep the slave population under control and continue working. So that's the purpose. That's another reason for why the focus on militarism was such in Sparta, because of that big slave population. So the military's job was to kind of prevent slave revolt, in addition to protecting from invasion from outside forces. So you have external factors that required the use of military, the lack of geography, right, and potential invasion. And you also have internal factors that necessitated a strong military, that being it being necessary to keep the slave population under control. Okay, quick definition for you. So, inevitably, there are a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of obstacles that any particular civilization is going to face. And there's a wide variety of different strategies that can be used in order to overcome these challenges. A militaristic society will use their military to solve their problems. It's almost like a shoot first, ask questions later kind of style of problem solving, right? It doesn't matter what the question is, it can be solved through the use of military. And that's generally militarism. The idea that having a strong military lends to the success of the nation in a variety of different ways. It will discourage others from invasion for sure. That's part of it. So, a national security perspective. Also, we talked about the slave population and how militarism was kind of a necessity as far as the Spartans were concerned, in order to keep their helots, the slave population, under control. So this is kind of a policy where it doesn't matter what the question is. The answer is use your military. Okay, I think just another slide or two. There's not too much on here. So, seeing as how we're discussing the kind of militaristic aspect of Spartan society, it's important to mention a couple of wars that were fought in Greece that involved Sparta. The first were the Persian Wars. This is Athens and Sparta team up together to fight against the Persian Empire that is kind of encroaching on their territory. If anyone has ever seen the movie 300, the Persian Wars, and more specifically the Battle of Thermopylae, that is what the movie 300 is about. Um, so this is they're vastly outnumbered, but due to their superior kind of military strategy and cohesion, they are able to kind of fend off a much larger Persian army as compared to the Greek army. So they will end up being victorious there. The Persians eventually will kind of turn around and go home. The other war that's going to be fought is called the Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War is a war that's fought between Athens and Sparta. They are fighting against each other, trying to figure out who is going to be kind of in control of Greece and who's going to be the superior city state that's kind of at the forefront of Greece. So the Peloponnesian War was kind of a big one. Sparta is going to be victorious here. So, as far as militarism is concerned, this is an example of the Spartan militaristic view. I mean, when Persians are invading, you don't have to be a militaristic, you don't have to have a militaristic approach to know that it's going to require military might in order to defend yourselves, right? But Athens and Sparta eventually will go to war also, and that's kind of an example of that Spartan militarism, where I'm sure there could have been some diplomatic solutions to their disagreements, but they turn to warfare instead because that's Sparta's advantage, right? So they kind of play to their own advantages. Okay, last slide. So, while arguably we define Athens as being a democracy, Sparta is very much an oligarchy, meaning it's a government that is run by a select few powerful people. So it was almost like I know they refer to their leader as king. Uh, so it almost feels like monarchy, right? Um, in addition, Sparta is run by a tyrant oftentimes, which is a ruler who seizes power by force. Um, in this sense of the word tyrant, it doesn't, we usually associate the word tyrant with someone who is kind of corrupt and provides poor leadership and is generally despised by their population that they have under their control. But in this particular sense of the word, tyrant does not necessarily mean those things. It simply means, in this context, a Greek ruler who seizes power by force, which is reasonable, right? Especially for Sparta, right? So we know Sparta is kind of a militaristic minded society. So seizing power by force is something that is certainly on brand for someone who has that militaristic approach, right? So this condition of, tyranny and a tyrant coming to power by force fits in with the ideology that military might kind of determines power and control. So a tyrant is a Greek ruler who seizes power by force.